Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Digital to Dice podcast. I am Dave.
I'm Ron.
And this is episode 73. What do you got for us?
It's the Match Game episode because the rebirth of Match Game was on July 4th, 1973 on CBS television, which also is my wife's birthday.
Wow. I didn't know that was a remake. I remember Match Game 75.
Right,
I didn't know that was a remake. Was it?
It was originally in the 60s.
Oh, was it? Oh.
It was on for 7 years in the 60s. And instead of being the game show that you and I all know and love, it was 2 celebrities and 4 civilians. And so it was 2 teams of 3.
Oh, wow.
So you had to you matched with your team. So it'd be name a loaf of bread, and so the celebrity would be the one that was there. So the celebrity might say pumpernickel.
Oh, so it's almost like a password game or something like that.
Almost like a password. Well, it's a Goods and Todman game. So yes, it was a derivative of password, and they hired Dick DeBartolo, who was one of the writers for Mad Magazine.
Oh, wow.
And so Dick was the one that came up with the salacious questions and Old Man Periwinkle and...
Large Marge is so large.
How large is she?
Yeah.
You know,
that Gene Rayburn with that 6-foot microphone. That was great. Yeah. Just love all that stuff there.
How do you get a hold of us?
All right. So ways to get a hold of us here. Digitaltodice.com is the website. That's where we park all of the shows over on Spreaker.com. So digitaltodice.com. We have a text line, 978-751-DICE, 978-751-3423. Email digitaltodice@yahoo.com. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. And boy, that is growing again, the group over there on Facebook. A lot of good things happening over there. All right, without further ado, episode 73, we talked to Jeff Riddolls. He is the producer of the Franchise Hockey Manager series and the new release, Franchise Hockey Manager 7. So let's get to that right now. Joining us on the Dice line is the producer of the Franchise Hockey Manager series, Jeff Riddolls. Jeff, welcome to the show.
Welcome. Hey, guys.
So today we want to talk about Franchise Hockey Manager, the series, Franchise Hockey Manager 7, which just got released last month, was it?
Yep, just out a couple of weeks before Christmas.
Okay, well, first, congrats on number 7. Yeah. And we'll be talking.
A long road.
We'll be talking a lot about that, and we want to talk about the series as well today. Kind of, get through the whole Franchise Hockey Manager series. But before we do anything, we have one question we ask all our guests, and that question is: what sporting event would you attend? Any sporting event in history, if you could go back in time, what sporting event would you attend?
Even if it was one that you actually went to, that doesn't. Should clarify that.
So if I had to pick anything, probably Game 8, last game of the 72 Summit Series in Moscow.
Oh,
good choice.
10-1 with a few seconds left. I think that would have to be the one.
Yeah. I've replayed that Summit Series in a bunch of different cards and dice games and video games, and boy, it's been fun replaying that series.
Back in North America after what happened the last time you played that series.
Yeah, the Russians beat them up pretty good in Russia in one of my plays. But yeah, that's interesting. We had a lot of people, and of course the American people, saying the 80 Olympics. But yeah, I can see you being a Canada guy. That Game 8 would be kind of fun. So all right, so get that out of the way. All right, so Jeff, what were some of the first games that you played?
First sports game I played, I think, was probably the old Status Pro series from Avalon Hill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Status Pro Baseball. I think I had the 1980 version of that.
Okay.
And started with that, and then that's really what got me interested in this sort of game. I think I bought Stratomatic Hockey not too long after that. There was a game called The World's Greatest Hockey Game. I wasn't a big fan of Strat Hockey. Didn't really like the way that worked. But there was this other game that was sort of advertised in the back of the Hockey News, $20. So sent that away and got this cardboard box, very sort of primitive setup. But it was a really neat little game. It was apparently a father and son team. I think they were in Chicago putting this game out. I don't think there's more than probably no more than a few thousand or a few hundred even of those sitting around. I've still got parts of it in a box somewhere.
I've heard of it, but I'm not real familiar. But I'm not familiar with it.
It was really simplistic. It looks like they had done it on some sort of primitive dot matrix printer, but
80s, man.
Yeah, you physically cut the cards out yourself. Had to get a pair of scissors out and get that all set up. But they also, the neat thing about them was they would give you the set of cards for the current season, but then through the season they would mail you these updates with new guys, and they gave you this booklet of everybody that was in training camp this year. They didn't actually give you the cards for them, but they gave you a few blank cards in this little book you could copy your ratings out into.
A patch. They did patches.
Yeah, patches and
by mail.
I'd say DLC, but it was essentially free DLC, and they're doing this in like 1981. Yeah, it was the 81-82 season. I think was the one I had.
Oh, that's really
I mean, incredible for the
pretty labor intensive.
Yeah, I mean, just for two guys doing it, I don't think they were doing it very long, but it was great while it lasted. And then just from there, I think I played through most of the Avalon Hill, the Status Pro games, the basketball, the football. Never played hockey. I think that died pretty quickly, and I don't think, from what I've heard, it wasn't that great of a game. But then let's see if from there, I think by the time that gets me sort of into the late 80s, and then personal computers come along, and then just I couldn't even tell you the names of what it was I was playing back then. Stuff on the Commodore 64.
Did you ever play Wayne Gretzky hockey?
Wayne Gretzky Hockey 2, and eventually Hockey League Simulator, which grew out of the Wayne Gretzky series, which is was what I was going to say next. And that was mid-90s?
By that point, yeah.
Yeah, I think I had Wayne Gretzky Hockey on the first PC I ever had, which was probably about 90.
Yeah, I had Wayne Gretzky Hockey 1.
And then the two versions of Hockey League Simulator, which is, I mean, really sort of the first prototype of this game of the first FHM 7 type of game, although it was limited to one season, I think, to begin with. And then I think HLS 2 let you play subsequent seasons, but it was basically just doing it with the same stats over and over again. There was no real management aspect to it. You could move guys around, but you weren't really managing a team. But I mean, it was great for the time, and there's still little features from that I like to think about adding and borrowing, putting into FHM 7.
On the Commodore 64, I played this video hockey game. I think it was by Mindscape, and it might have just been called Ice Hockey. And it was 3 skaters on each team, and you had a joystick.
I had that. I think I had that. Yeah,
and you controlled the center only. It was the first time I remember, when the puck went to the winger, he controlled it, And if you got a penalty, you sat in the box and you watched,
That's cool.
And that was fun, yeah. And, you started off with an expansion team, and you could put it in any division you want, and you could name the team, and then you drafted guys. And it was a really fun little three skater versus 3 skater game. Horizontal look is what it was. And that's the one I had. And I played that to the wee hours of the morning. That was before I had, the Sega Genesis and the Nintendo and all that stuff, too,
The cheat on that was if you took a team of all old players, they would have terrible stamina ratings, but their skill ratings would be super high. But the game wasn't really balanced right because the stamina wouldn't offset them. You could run up a huge lead in the first couple of, I think it was 5-minute period, something like that.
Something like that, yeah. They were fast, yeah.
Yeah, the first couple of periods, and then your team would just be completely dead in the third. The other team couldn't catch up.
I found that in that game there was that if you were trailing by a lot, you could trip the guy at the opening face-off, shoot it from center ice, and it would go in every time, and you would catch back up. Conversely, if you were winning a lot, you couldn't get it out of your zone. And I think you had 10 seconds to get it up over the center of the blue line or something because you couldn't sit behind your net. And you would go behind the net and the computer would chase you. And you come out the other side and the computer would chase you. To a point, you would get delay of game penalties and they'd go on the power play and score. It was just, it was scripted that they were going to score a goal. And if you come out, they stole it and they scored. So you could tell when they were going to score in that game. But the Commodore 64, that was a little fun game there. I watch videos once in a while on YouTube of that game as well.
I got to look that up. It was like 88. Yeah, I remember I bought that
88.
in 88.
Yep, it was. It was 88 for the Commodore 64.
Gretzky game, you could enter the first one, you could enter your own teams. And so there's one person that will listen that knows that we put in our street hockey team from my freshman year in college in 89. and then would routinely get slaughtered by Gretzky's Kings and all that. But still, that was fun to be able to see your buddies skating around on the ice and getting body checked by Marty McSorley.
Fun time there. Okay, so what actually got you into game design, and what are some of the first games that you did design?
Well, I think when you're playing these games, going back to the board games, there's always something in them that the game doesn't do that you're interested in and you want to add. So you start making modifications to them. I had that World's Greatest Hockey Game, which I liked quite a bit. In addition to adding the extra players, I wrote up this whole additional penalty system that would allow where you could have brawls and that sort of thing happening. Because hey, it was the '80s. That was all kinds of that kind of stuff going on. And then just that I kind of got in the habit of that. So even with Hockey League Simulator, you couldn't really modify that, but you could create new seasons and edit players. I think I remember one year, can't remember what season it was, but doing a college version of it with all the college teams. And so you just get in I started doing that, and in the habit of modifying and figuring out how to do this stuff with games. And so after a while, you get a little bit of experience in that. And then the other thing I do play a lot of, or did back then, was board war games.
Oh wow!
And,
okay.
Got into computer games from that as well. And I think the first video game credit I've actually got is a game called The Operational Art of War, which came out.
Oh,
remember that one?
I do remember that one. I think I've owned all 4 versions of that, as a matter of fact. But
yep, Norm Koger. They did what I worked on was one of the first expansion packs. That was called Flashpoint Kosovo, which was I think it had about a dozen different new scenarios for the game, and I think about 4 of those were mine because I had 2 to start with, and then the guy from their publisher, I can't remember what was the name of it. Can't remember offhand, but the guy saying, "Okay, well, we've got requests for this, this battle or this war. Can somebody do this?" And I said, "Sure, I'll go ahead and do it."
Yeah.
So I wound up with doing about a third of that for them. So that was my first video game design experience.
My wife rolling her eyes as I picked that up at GameStop or Electronic Boutique or whatever they were called 25 years ago, whatever the hell it was. Yeah. I played that a lot.
Yep, I'm saying that's really cool to see that, and you're something that you've done sitting on a game shelf. And I don't really get that anymore because there are no, you don't see computer games that often in stores. But but from there, and then let's see, I did that for a while. Kind of took a long break I was working a job that ate up a lot of my time then. But then a few years later, Eastside Hockey Manager from Sports Interactive came out, and which was very similar to what FHM is now, branched off of the Championship Manager, Football Manager, soccer series. And I offered help with that. I think I originally started out working on their Western Hockey League ratings and doing the players for that, and gradually took on more and more responsibility there. I got to had that by help with a few design things and sort of other odds and ends around the game. So I had that quite a bit of experience with working with that type of game. And then so when FHM started, that died late 2000s. It came back a few years ago briefly, but the SI Sports Interactive and Sega spent a lot of money on it. Sales didn't really do that well, so they wound up canceling it. So that was gone for a few years, but then Out of the Park Baseball was doing well at the time, and they decided to do a hockey game, and I got in touch with them and said, well, I've got this experience with EHM doing this stuff. I can probably help you out getting started and give you a little advice, and you need to do this and this and this. So I started doing that, and gradually started doing more and more and more, and eventually got to the point where I said, well, why don't we just hire you? You can do this full time. You be the producer, and we'll work on the coding. And that was, let's see, January. I think we're coming up on 8 years now.
Congratulations.
It might be,
8 years. 8 years. No, 9 years, because there was a little bit of a lead time before that.
Oh, fantastic.
So,
hey, what are some of the tougher things that people might not know about, tougher things about designing a game?
The big one is unintended consequences.
Okay.
it's any sort of any sort of computer coding. You're going to have that stuff in any software, but in this, you change something and it winds up affecting 6 things you didn't expect. Just case in point, with the new 2D engine we added this year, I'm still doing a lot of tuning that and making changes to that. One thing I noticed early on with the release version of it, the players tended to pass backwards a little too often, and often in situations where it wasn't really appropriate. They would pass back out of the offensive zone, which doesn't make a lot of sense. So I said, okay, well, that's got to change. So I did a couple of fairly simple things that fixed that. For some reason, that tanked the scoring, dropped the league scoring by about 1.5 goals. Which was bizarre because, if you'd figure it was, okay, improving offensive performance, guys are going to be moving forward more. That should lead to more goals. But nope, dug into it, and it turned out, the best I can see, it turned out that the backwards passes were creating a lot of turnovers and easy 2-on-1s and breakaways for the other team, which was adding like an extra goal or so to scoring league-wide. So after, we tried to do that in an early update to begin with, and I saw that happening. Said, "Whoa, no way we can get this fixed in time." So that was actually just in the update that we put out yesterday. I had enough time since Christmas to go back in and first add the backwards passing fix, and then go back in and sort of correct everything that broke. So you start getting a reasonable number of breakaways again, and enough offensive chances in the scoring. It's probably still a little bit lower than I want it, but I wound up fixing probably things in 4 or 5 different places just because of making that one change. And that it's not just a 2D engine, that happens throughout the game. You make one change in say the artificial intelligence for the computer run teams, and it winds up affecting a bunch of things you totally didn't expect it to. So then you've got to go and fix that. And
yeah. I used to play in bands when I was younger, and we'd be mixing down demo tapes, and I need the bass to be a little higher. As soon as you do that, the rest of the mix goes out of whack, and then it's like, and then you're bringing up the drums, and then the vocals, and then the guitar, and the keyboards, and next thing you know, I can't hear my bass anymore. And it's the one thing. It's just
it's a circle, isn't it?
Oh yeah, so I can hear that. Okay,
I've heard that before, that you make one change and it cascades into lots of other things. The game carries an NHL license.
Yep.
What kind of input do they have? What resources do they add that you wouldn't have necessarily had without it?
Big thing is being able to use the team logos, and that is makes a significant difference in your visibility and number of sales. And then we do a few things occasionally with them. You'll see us on NHLDog.com doing something like didn't do it this year, but a season prediction or a playoff prediction. That's nice to have. They'll do a little bit of promotion for us that way. They're not really super hands-on in terms of what we can and can't do. The main thing is making sure their property is represented correctly.
Oh,
like the logos have the little, the trademark beside them, and then they're the correct version of the logo. Like we switched from a lighter background this year to a darker background. So there's alternate versions of a lot of the logos, like the say the Leafs and the Lightning. Now in the game right now, it's the white version of their logo because it's on a darker background. With a lighter background in previous years, we had to have the blue version of it. So they go through that with a fine tooth comb and make sure that everything is correct. Like even going through all the historical logos. No, you got to change this one, that one. But it's nice to have. But it's great to have that because we can have all the official historical logos going back to the 1917.
That's really fun.
They put that all on the website. And but in terms of saying what we can and can't do, there's a couple of things they've said that they haven't even specifically said they're uncomfortable with. They just asked, do you relocate teams automatically? Show teams getting into financial trouble, that kind of thing. Sort of implying they'd rather not see it, but
in the bad light, no.
Yeah, but and saying people can if somebody wants to, they've got the editor version, the editing option in the game where they can move Carolina back to New England or whatever. But that's not something that happens in the course of normal gameplay. So they're content with that, and I wouldn't get too crazy with showing on screen violence or anything like that they're not going to be happy about, or off ice stuff that players are getting into trouble for. It's probably something I'd want to stay away from, just because you don't want to poke the bear. And
so you're saying any Flyers game from 73 to 78 is going to have censored over the chalkboard?
Yeah, pretty much.
You wonder how they ever finished a game back in the 70s, because you watch clips on YouTube or whatever it is, it's like now Cashman in the corner, elbow, and here we go, and then the benches just they all come in. It's like, how do they ever finish a game if they empty the benches every time there's a fight?
Everything is the number. Even the mid 70s numbers, the fighting numbers aren't as high as they got. It starts going crazy like early mid 80s. Where you had that one season with Dave Schultz where you had the 475, I think it was, penalty minutes. But then by the time you're in the 80s, you're getting 10 guys going over 300 something minutes a year, and it's just insane. The brawls between Montreal and Quebec and that sort of thing. So that's something I've been
brawl. Yeah.
You see a lot of fights in the Stanley Cup Finals back in the day too, and now by the time the second or third round comes around, those goons are gone. They're not on the team anymore. So it was
barely any of them left in the league to begin with.
Yeah, this is true.
I think the guy who leads the league in fights this year will probably if it wasn't a shortened season, it's entirely possible that somebody's only going to have single digits. Nobody's going to even have 10 fights this season.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's talk about the Franchise Hockey Manager series, and we'll lead up to 7 here real quick. So Franchise Hockey Manager 2 is when I started. It's still one of my most played games on Steam. I actually won, I think that's the one I won the Avco Cup, with the New England Whalers. And what was fun about that season, I remember, is that when I went to the free agents, and they had a lot of 5-star prospects in the free agents that I knew about, so I plucked a couple of guys and put them on my team, all legal like back then it was. But, playing historical mode is what I like to play in this game. And the fun thing is that when you look at some of the younger guys, you know who was good and who wasn't, you know what I mean? So you kind of have a little bit of a cheat there if you play historical, if you know what I mean?
We kind of leveled the playing field for everybody on that this year, because we added the option in historical mode. You can look at the player, and then there is a tab on the player screen that will let you look at his real stats for the whole career.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's not just people with the hockey knowledge now, or the old guys like us that remember back then how good guys turned out. So anybody can do that now.
Okay.
Still technically cheating, though, I think.
Yeah, because you just know. I think I picked up, like Cap Raider and a few other people like that played for the Bruins in the future. I was like, these guys are pretty good. I'm going to get them.
Did you sign yourself?
No, I didn't. He plays on the Seals, though. Dave Gardner plays on the Seals, and I play him once in a while, so it is kind of fun. He played with Montreal, too, Juckett, and I know you're a Montreal fan. So I played 2. Now, 3 and 4, Franchise Hockey Manager 3 and Franchise Hockey Manager 4, they got a little complex, and I remember you guys talking about that a little bit, how it just, when you, I think it was 5, you kind of turned the ship around, and you made it a lot more simpler, and I remember you guys talking about that it just, for some reason, 3 and 4 got really complex, people were confused, maybe you did too much all at once. 5, you seem to turn the ship around, and I'm not sure if it was 5 or 6, you got the NHL license in, I forget which one that was.
I think it was actually 3, if I remember.
Was it 3 or 4? Really?
Yeah, it was early.
Was it early?
5th-year license. So it was 3.
Oh, okay.
It was a lot earlier than we expected. That came out of the park, having a deal with Major League Baseball, and Major League Baseball working with the same people that handle the NHL licensing. And so I think actually our owner Marcos was over at the MLB All-Star game one year, was talking to our the guy with MLB. MLB Advanced Media, the one we dealt with, and he said,
now it's BAMTech.
BAMTech now, which is still who we deal with, but he mentioned, and Marcus mentions to him, well, we got this hockey game, and said, well, we're handling the NHL stuff. Why don't we talk about this, see if we can work something out? And they made us a pretty good offer, and decided to take it, and it's worked out really well for us.
Yeah, I remember playing without the license, and I wasn't sure if it was 4 or 5. If it was 3, wow, that's good that it came there. And I remember you guys were kind of dancing around that. You were real careful with what you were doing, because I remember one of the questions that I asked, it's like, can I take some teams out of the league so I can have an original 6 in the mid-70s? And remember, it was like, well, no, we don't want to contract the NHL, and that wasn't what we wanted to do. But now you can do whatever you want here in the league, which is fun. So now you can add as many teams. I saw a guy on YouTube add like 30 teams to the league. I thought that was kind of interesting. I like
that's something we really opened up in 6, the amount of editing you can do. And then we expanded on that again at 7 and took made it even more flexible.
Yeah. One of the projects that I want to do is pick a season. I'm not sure which season it is. And go back to the original 6 teams, like erase everybody but the original 6 teams, and then do a fantasy draft and just look at the lineups if there was only 6 teams in the league. You could even do that in the modern league too, and imagine some of the teams you could have if there were only 6 teams.
Or you can even do that. The way it's with the stuff we've added this year. What you can do is say start in they were mid 1940s after they got down to 6 teams, and then just play that all the way through to 2020.
With no expansion teams, right?
6 teams the whole time, and you can see which guys, Gretzky's obviously still going to make the team, and which guys actually wind up playing in the NHL and who puts up the points. And
yeah, it's really I've watched the progression of this game, and it's really been enjoyable. In fact, I did a 2-hour-long stream yesterday with Franchise Hockey Manager 7, where I started in 73 with the California Golden Seals, of course, and I checked the Iron Curtain button. I unchecked that, and I grabbed Mikhailov, Karlamov, Petrov, Sigankov, and Vasiliev. So the 5 starting players on the Russian team from 72 Summit Series, and Tretiak and net, who went to Montreal, Jucket, and I had to steal him back because he wouldn't sign with the Steels. So I forced a trade to the Seals, and we ended up taking first place in the West, and we lost in the finals to Montreal. But that was so fun, and it was so fun.
You're basically the California Red Army at that point.
I was a California Red Army, yeah. But it was still fun.
Jerry Brown was governor, right, at that point? So
yeah, there we go.
It was fun, like, after I took those 5 to see where the other guys went in the league, because there was still a lot of European guys that ended up on other teams. So that whole season I played was really a creative season when you added all those players into it. And it was fun watching the Russians not perform in the playoffs. They really didn't come through. Mikhailov was 3rd in scoring behind Orr and Esposito, and in the playoffs, he went cold for me. He really did. But it was a fun season.
I thought I'd rate those guys pretty well for big games. You ran into some bad luck. Maybe at least the key guys, the Mikhailovs and Tretiaks, and
Tretiak won 41 games or something. Milosh played 1 game. He played 5 games. He finished 1. So they kept yanking Milosh, poor Milosh. But I let the computer kind of handle all that. But it was a fun time. I upped my rosters to 20, so everybody had 4 lines and 3 lines of D. And the creativity in this game, like I said, the sandbox mode is really enjoyable for stuff like that. Now, I know that's probably not how most guys play it, but I did that, and I streamed most of that and had fun, played my playoffs today. So there's some really creative things you can do here. So let's get right to Franchise Hockey Manager 7 now that we're talking about it. So obviously, let's talk about what is new. Obviously, the chalkboard. Talk about that.
Yeah, the big thing we added this year was the whole 2D animated mode where you can watch the game and top down on players moving around and, exactly where the puck is and where all the players are at any given moment. Before previous years, it's been a little more abstract. You could tell approximately where the puck was on the ice and who's on the ice, but you didn't get to see the whole thing animated out. So this year, well, actually, this goes back to a project we started working on about 3 years, just sort of an experimental thing we were doing on the side to see if we could do something like this. And then round about this time, well, maybe a little bit before that, but last year we realized, okay, let's take the chance. It's going to be a big project. Let's go ahead with this. And in this respect, COVID turned out to be great for us because it pushed everything back. The NHL starting in December, or originally they were going to start in December. So we moved our release back about 3 months from where it would typically be. And that extra 3 months was really useful because we were able to, get the game to a much better state than it would have been if we had to release in October. But, so we wrote that entirely from the ground up. I think it borrows a couple of very small systems like the way face-offs get resolved and maybe 1 or 2 other things. But other than that, it was rewrote everything from the ground up. So now you can see the players moving around on the ice, the hits happening, the shots, the goals. and everything. And, you can speed that up and down as you want to. If you want to rush through it, there's an option to, play the next few minutes really quickly, and you can stop that. And if you want to watch, say, the last 5 minutes of the game or the third period, you can do that. So that is the big, huge, time-consuming feature. That was a huge risk to add it, really, because that could have turned out really badly if it hadn't worked out. Thank God it didn't. People seem pretty happy with it, and it's opened up a lot of new avenues, things, stats we're going to be able to track, different things we're going to be able to do with that game mode, and, more customization. We'll be adding that fairly soon. And that's just opened up a huge new avenue of things for us to add to the game in future years. So I'm really looking forward to that. It's a lot of fun to work with too. Much easier to change things than it was with the old system. So that's worked out really well. So that was the one big thing. And I got to cheat here and look at my list of other new features. We were talking about the other thing, the 72 Canada-Russia series. That was one of the new things we've added this year. And along with a lot of the Russian players that you were mentioning, we added historical international tournaments. So right now we've got the Summit Series, the 72 one against the NHL, and the 74 one, the Soviets against the WHA, which a lot of people, doesn't get remembered that well, but is in there too. And then the Canada Cups from the 80s through the 90s, and all of the Olympic tournaments going back to, I think, 1920, the first one.
Oh, wow.
So, and then on top of that, I had to go in and add all the players for that, because you don't want a bunch of fake players for these.
54-0 U.S. pasting of Belgium, or whatever it is that you had, Dave. Right?
Yeah. That's.
I played a cards and dice game of one of the very first Olympics, and it was a hockey one, and I was like, I had to contact the developer of the game and says, how come there's like two columns here for this? So why am I rolling the dice twice? It's like, well, because that was a bad team, and I rolled the dice twice, and whatever the score was, 28-0 or whatever. I rolled, and I got 28-0 in the ice hockey game. But that was 20s Olympics.
Like that. That's in the game when you play those older tournaments right now. I don't think it's quite as one-sided. I think I tuned the one of the Belgian guys, or the some of the other teams that were the 1920s that were getting wiped out by literally. I think Canada beat Denmark 47-0 one year. I think that's the record.
Oh wow, I
don't think that was beaten until sometime like in the last few years, when in the really low pool of the World Championships, where you got the guys who are playing for Georgia or North Korea, and half of them are just learning to skate, and it's completely unbalanced. But that's So we've got all those Olympics.
Now, if you want to play those, right? So you got the Olympics in there, you got some of the Summit Series, you got some of the Canada Cups, I think. Now, if you want to play those, you do have to play that season, right? That's how you get to those games. They're not a standalone part of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, depending on on which year it is, if you just want to play the 72 Summit Series, that happens right at the start of 1972-73. So you start a 72-73 game, you're going to get that as the very first thing you see. But if you want to play the Miracle on Ice stuff in 1980, you got to start in 79, and it'll work its way around to the beginning of the through the 79-80 season until you hit February, and then you go to Lake Placid and get that tournament.
Okay, and if you, I'm sorry, go ahead, Ron.
Is it possible within the realm of that season for the Olympic teams to play warm-up games?
Not right now, but it's something I want to add. Somebody suggested that really early on after we released, and I think it's a good idea. It's just a couple of complications on doing it, but particularly with the player use, you don't want to be taking teams away from the, particularly once you get to...
No, but beforehand, I remember reading that the Team USA played the Soviets at Madison Square Garden a couple of weeks before the Olympics and got
destroyed.
pasted.
Yeah, 10-3 or something. Yeah,
and also 1980 they played. They never actually played Canada in the Olympic tournament itself, because they were in separate groups. But in the exhibition games, I'm not sure if the U.S. team ever did beat Canada in those. Huh. So just so you know, we could have taken you that year if we go ahead and choked in the playoffs,
right,
and hadn't made it to the medal round.
Now, if you want to play as one of the Olympic teams or one of the Summit teams, you were saying that you need to do that when you first fire up your game, correct?
Yeah, you can choose to start in control of a national team in addition to the what your regular club team. If you want to start as the Canadians or whoever, you can also specify you're running Team Canada, Or the other thing that can happen is you can get offered the job during the course of the season. Although that's you're probably not going to have the reputation right at the start of the game to get that. You're more likely if it's an ongoing game and you get up to, say 1972 and you're the best Canadian GM in the game, then you may get the job offer to run the national team for the Summit Series.
So for example, you could start the 72 season, and you could be a WHA GM or coach, and also be the coach of Canada or Russia in Summit Series, correct?
Right, yep.
And the same in 1979. You start up 79, and if you want to coach one of those Olympic teams, you would have to put that in right at the beginning, correct?
Right, yeah.
Okay, good.
Completely changing the idea. What is do you know what the most common mode of gameplay is? Is it, as Dave talks about, historical? Is it fictional? Or is it someone going through and taking a current NHL team and trying to get them to the promised land?
That's the last one. Generally, I think it's not by a huge majority, but I think that's the most common thing that people do. Even our people not from Canada or the U.S. I think most people wherever they are tend to play as the NHL teams. So that obviously, that's why the license makes so much sense. Mm-hmm. And play in take their favorite team and make the trades they want to see and see if they can get them into the playoffs or rebuild them, or depending on what kind of shape the team is in now. But myself, I probably play historical most often. We're all old guys. Mm-hmm. Go back to the 80s and play that. And I think I had the thing we were doing on streaming last year was we started on sort of an alternate history Canucks game where they expanded in, I think it was 64 or 65 instead of 1970, and got an early start. And I think we wound up playing that, with the extra, the longer season or the longer wait before the new game. I think we made it up to 73 or 74. And I still didn't win a cup at any point in there, even with the early start.
Well, that's fun. Going back to some of the things that are new. So we got the chalkboard that's new. We got the Summit Series and the Olympics that new. What were some of the other things on the list of note that you might want to point out for Franchise Hockey Manager 7?
One of the things we did was talking about the sort of sandbox mode, added a lot more customization abilities. We've got the whole, even if you don't want to play as the NHL, if you don't want to play historical or, any of the modern stuff, you can set up your own completely custom league, totally fictional. And what we do, that used to be limited to a specific setup. You used to have a top-level league like the NHL, a minor league, optionally as a minor league, and then optionally junior leagues to feed into the main leagues if you didn't want the players just being created right before the draft. And you were sort of stuck in that mode in previous years. What we did this year was open that up so you can add as many leagues as you want, as many teams in them. So people are doing all these crazy setups with multiple leagues in different countries, and pretty much anything. I can't even. And some people always surprise me with what they come up with, but you can any conceivable setup you want, and then a lot of the rules now are a lot more flexible. Varying roster sizes. If you want a cap, you can turn that off if you want. Set up your own playoff system. And we expanded on that a lot last year. And then in addition to that, the stuff in historical mode where you can depart from history. And now you used to be, last year when we first introduced it, if you turned the historical editing on, from that point forward, the league wouldn't evolve anymore. It was just stuck in the mode that you set it in. If you wanted to add expansion teams when they came in historically, you had to start adding them manually when you got up that season. Now you got the option of turning that stuff on or off as need be. So if you want to get to 1979 and you want to keep the WHA intact and you don't want those NHL, you don't want the four teams going over to the NHL, you can do that, and you can just deactivate. You can turn off NHL expansion for that season, and Edmonton, Winnipeg, Quebec, and Hartford don't go over. They stay in the WHA, and you can see what happens if the WHA played through the 1980s.
Oh, that's kind of neat, yeah. I imagine in the fictional series, this fictional world there, the game creates all the players for you. Is that how that works? Yeah,
you've got some control over it. You can control the league levels. what type of players are likely to be able to sign, the quality of play, and you can specify where the players are coming from. Although we need to make that a little more flexible. It's not as easy to set up as I'd like right now. But if you want to set up a league that's, say, nothing but players from the United Kingdom, you can do that, or something close to it at least, and have everything, based in England, and only English, Scottish, Welsh players. That's something you can do, or any country you can think of, really.
Okay. Now you have exhibition games too. We were talking a little bit about that earlier, where you can play pretty much any team versus any team. Now when that works, there we were talking about you play the home team. So if you want to set up an exhibition game, you got to make sure that whatever team you want to play is the home team in that. Correct?
Right.
Okay. And you said you guys might be doing some revamping with that to make that.
I think the direction that's going to go in is probably get blended into the custom game mode, because right now we've got this because Out of the Park Baseball had done it this way before us, and so there was sort of a user demand for that kind of thing. They wanted the same thing. But we've added it the way they did, as a separate option at the start. There's no league. You just set up, you just play a single game or a series of games. I'm thinking what it might make more sense to do is to incorporate that into the custom mode, and just sort of make custom mode a little more friendlier to setting up something like a single series, or even a single game between a couple of teams, and only two teams in it, because that'll make it a little easier for us to get the new features into that mode. And it'll also give you all the stuff like you'll be able to access the stats a lot easier if you want to play 80 games between two different teams and see what the result is, turn injuries off, and no trading or anything like that. And it'll be a lot easier to get the statistical results from it using the existing engine. And we could probably add, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I've been thinking of that we can do if we do it that way. So it may be easier going forward just to incorporate it into that. And that'll let you do a lot more than you can do right now in that mode.
Okay. Speaking of injuries, when did you guys add that feature to turn injuries off? Because I started to use that. This is how I enjoy playing. I like to kind of keep my team intact and let all the superstars be superstars without getting hurt. When was that added? Because I don't remember that back in Franchise Hockey Manager 2.
Oh boy, that's a good question.
I think it was in the last one. You could reset.
I know that was I think 4 or 5 when we revamped the injury system and changed it so it's more directly based on game events. So if somebody gets a big hit or blocks a shot or something and gets hurt that way, I think we did that at the same time as that, because it made it possible to turn it off. But what we're talking about doing right now, and I think we just fleshed out the details of this, is making the injury options a little more flexible, so you'll be able to turn it down to have fewer. I mean, there were a few people complaining because the game right now has a reasonably realistic level of injuries. You look at the number of games missed in the game, and over the course of a season, it'll be similar to what happens in the NHL over the course of a season. But the perception is, when it's happening to your team, there's way too many injuries in this game. This isn't realistic.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is add a few. I think we were talking about 3 or 4 different levels of injuries. The default realistic level, and then tune it down so there's a few less, even less, and then none at all.
A slider, so that'd be great.
Actually play 50 games in a year.
Yeah. Right. Okay. A couple more questions here. What have been some of the user or players' suggestions for the game, and what are some of the things you'd still like to see come to the Franchise Hockey Manager series?
I think one of the ones, we mentioned was people really, particularly for new people coming in, they say they find it a little hard to adapt to. There's a lot of options, and it's a little confusing to know what's going on, particularly if you jump into the deep end and start with an NHL team where you've got to worry about things like the cap and the various NHL contract rules. I'd really like to figure out how to get either a tutorial system built into the game, or at least something in the manual, or some videos showing you how to do basic things and walking you through the game and giving you a little more feedback. I think that's something we're hearing a lot of from new players, that they'd like a little more guidance on what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
Have you actually had any players, as in NHL players, contact you and say, I'd like to see this in the game, or this would, here's something that goes on that you may not realize, or yada, yada, help something in the back end to make that experience just a little bit better. Not necessarily in the story writing part of it, but, as far as making the AI more intelligent or make the game even more realistic.
NHL players know, we've had them from, players at lower levels and European leagues suggest some things that we've looked at, but we've had the thing that's been more useful to us is we've had a couple of people in NHL front offices talk to us, and I can't mention the name. No. Don't embarrass the guys. I don't want to get them in trouble, but something like the way player value is calculated in the game. We changed that a couple of years based on the feedback of somebody who actually does this for a living, scouts players at the NHL level, and saying, okay, well, this should count for a little more, this should count for a little less. So that's something we revamped, and we also changed the scouting system this year. I haven't talked to him recently, so I haven't had his feedback on that yet. But yeah, we do occasionally hear from people who are in the game professionally and who are enjoying it, and it's something you can put on a laptop. We're on a road trip, and
right. Yeah. Is it scouting exact, or is there a fog of war involved with it?
Oh, lots of fog of war.
Okay.
The basic concept in scouting is that there's sort of a general consensus about players, and it may be right, it may be wrong, it may be too good, it may be excessively negative. And the way scouting works in the game is you try to eliminate that error. So you get the common consensus on a player. The guy, if you say going into the draft, the stuff that gets probably published in the draft guides, that there's dozens of them coming out every year. That's sort of the default level, and then it's the job of your scouts to get past that and find out, okay, who's overrated, who is, this diamond in the rough that we did that everybody is underrating, but he's actually going to turn out to be much better than we think he is, and correct for that error and give you an accurate and as accurate a picture as possible. And we tried, and this year we revamped the scouting as well. Tried to simplify that a little bit so there's less busy work. You're not having to assign scouts to individual players or teams or anything like that. You can just sort of figure out your scouting level. You hire scouts by region, and they add to your scouting strength in that region. And then there's a few things. There's a few other options you can set in terms of priorities. And that's, I think, made scouting a lot more accessible this year, and we're going to elaborate more on that in future versions.
See, that's where I think a video would come in really well, because I don't do any of that. Whereas if there was something that said, hey, let's talk about scouting. Here's how you can improve your team. And just, that's where that would really come in handy there, because some of that stuff I just put on AI, and it's just over my head, And I tinker with it once in a while, and I hire guys, and it's kind of fun, but I kind of don't know what I'm doing,
Yeah, that's something I've got to get Adam, our community manager, to do something like that, because he loves the scouting stuff. He'll sit there and do that for minutes and minutes on end while we're streaming.
I know. Yeah, it's been fun watching some of that stuff there. Okay, so again, what is on your wish list for Franchise Hockey Manager? What are some of the things that realistically you can do, and maybe some things that maybe you can't do but you'd still like to put into the game?
I think the big thing next year is probably going to be something we've been putting off on over and over again for the years, is revamping the sort of business side of stuff. Just not just in terms of contracts, but having a little more detail on your revenues, like jersey sales. You want to see, you bring in a popular guy. Is he going to sell a bunch of more jerseys for you, make more money that way? And it's sort of a neat thing to see. And then stuff like the arenas in particular is something I really want to get into. Do you want to maybe not rebuild, but do you want to make structural changes to your arena? Do you want to do a big project like the way the Rangers overhauled Madison Square Garden a couple of years back, and change things like your seating?
Glendale.
Yeah. And then, or maybe build an entirely new arena,
right?
And then just stuff along those lines. And then I think the new 2D engine, the stuff I want to do there, there's just a million things that are now possible with that we can add on. The coaching feedback, and I've got this there's a little hook in the code right now for something called unusual events. So anything that I can think of their power failures in the old Boston Garden, Milbury going after somebody with a shoe.
Picking on the Bruins, I see.
Yeah, it's revenge for that. Bruins
final. We just can't tell.
Oh, stop, you guys. Stop picking on the Bruins. So, yeah, I know you guys, the chalkboard's out. It's the first year with it. And I know that, we got a lot of people listening to the show that have played the game and talked about the chalkboard. And I know that you guys have already, done a couple of hot fixes. You're still working on the chalkboard. I know it's obviously not perfect. And there's some things but you already talked about the backward passes and the whole bit and fixing that there. So I know that the chalkboard is something you're really going to work on, and you've been doing that there. One thing that the big suggestion keeps coming up is that people would like a speed between normal and fast. It seems normal is really slow, fast is too fast to watch. Something in the middle would be almost perfect, or even a slider to control that speed a little bit. That was the number one suggestion that we got as far as the chalkboard went.
Yeah, that'd be easy enough to do. That's just changing a multiplier in there. I'll take a look at that because I think the next update, the one we just put out an update yesterday that was focused on adding the real 2021 schedules, the shortened versions and canceled leagues and all of that, and adding Seattle expansion in automatically. That happens at the start of 2021-22.
So literally releasing the Kraken.
Releasing the Kraken.
Yeah.
And the next update is going to be more focused. We were just talking about it today. Is going to be focused on the 2D stuff, the chalkboard type of thing, and adding new things into that, a little more customizability. And so I think that's something we'll be able to sneak in there.
Would it be possible? I know that people don't like games compared to other games, but in Football Manager, you can watch the whole game. You can watch just the goals or key highlights. Is that something that you're thinking of, that maybe just a key highlight thing?
We had it in the old engine, and I don't think it'll be coming this year, but I think we'll get it in there eventually. It's just a little complicated to do because you get into questions of with the way Football Manager does it is they simulate the entire game. And except every time, unless you intervene, and then it resimulates the whole thing again, and that lets them determine when the highlights are going to happen. So when you're seeing those highlights in the game, that's actually a game that's already been played, and they're just going back and showing it to you.
Oh.
And then if you go back and change something, that's their little cheat. That's at least that's the way it used to be. I haven't talked to the guys over there in a couple of years, so maybe they've changed something. But as far as I know, it's still that way. And so do we do it that way, or do we do it some other way? Sebastian came up with a clever way of doing it for the old engine, but I'm not sure if it's possible to. Sebastian and Palkowski, our lead coder, came up with that, and I'm not sure if he's going to be able to do the same thing with the new engine. He's been playing with some stuff. So right now, all we've got is the quick button option, which shuts down the graphics and speeds up the game even faster than the fast mode.
Okay.
And you can jump ahead. So, if you want to sim through the first two periods and watch the third, or watch the last 5 minutes of the game or whatever, you got that option now. So there's sort of a simple thing in there now. But yeah, I would like to get just a highlights option. And then the other thing we can spin off of that, if we've got a way of saving highlights, then you can start doing that. If you want to view the highlights from another game, or if you're scouting a player and he's in a playable league where the games are being played out like this, you can maybe get a little scouting tape of what he's done in his games.
That'd be neat, because I had a game that I played today, and somebody scored with 5 seconds left to win it, and that would have been neat to see, or an overtime winner, something like that would be kind of neat. Ron brought up something too about the chalkboard, is that if you're playing the game, and you know how you have the stat boxes that come up on either side for each team, right?
Yep.
Okay. If you sim to the end of the game, those stat boxes don't update. You know what I mean? Is that if you stop the game midway through the first period, it would have stats on there of what had happened, time on ice and shots on goal and all this other stuff. But if you hit the sim game, the game ends, you get the final score, but that doesn't change. You actually have to go to the box score to get all the nitty gritty.
Yeah, we have them on that last screen, so you don't have to look into the box score. Yeah, okay, I think we can. That should be. So
in other words, that would hit sim end, and then it would just
update at the end of the game. I think we can do that. Yeah, so you can see that and get a quick look. And is there anything you want to look at more in depth in the box score? If you see somebody had 7 points or something, and
okay,
I think that's doable.
Okay. I get two listeners.
You asked for easy stuff.
Yeah, I get two listener questions. But Ron, do you have anything else do you want to ask you?
No.
Okay. All right, I do get two listener questions.
Can we just make it easy for the Habs to win something? There's my question. I just want.
You're asking me this the day after they beat the Canucks 7-3?
It's been 27
easy enough for them already.
27 years.
Man, do you know what, Jeff? Do you know what I got Ron for Christmas? I got him a VHS player so he could watch some Canadian Stanley Cup highlights. I did. Okay.
It's better than the Super 8 player for the Bob Orr stuff, right?
Yeah, the Bobby Orr stuff for the Super 8. Okay. All right, so listen to questions here. Paul writes in. Paul says, my question would be how FHM got started and how the idea of an OOTP-like hockey game came to be.
That, I think, well, what originally happened was, if you remember back, I can't remember which version of OOTP it was, but when they decided to do the mobile version of the game, Marcus hired another guy. He's over in Hamburg in Germany. Hired a local guy named Sebastian Palkowski to work on the mobile game for him. And so that took a couple of years to come out. And as they were finishing that up, Sebastian said, well, I'd like to continue with you guys. And franchise, I played franchise hockey manager and like that. And I played a couple of these other smaller hockey games. And I like this, the management games. I'd like to do a hockey version of that. So he eventually talked Marcus and Andreas, our owners, into it. And what was that? That would have been about 2011, 2012, I think. Finally got the ball rolling, I think, in 2012. I think my very first emails back and forth with him were probably late 2011, now that I think about it. And they made the announcement that they were going to be doing this, and it was still a long ways off. But then, took us... Well, the first version was FHM 2014, and I think it was originally supposed to come out 2013 and was delayed a little bit. That's when I came on board, finally got it out, and you had a long beta version and eventually released the official version of it that summer. And it took us 2 years after that to get the next version of it done, FHM 2, and then it's been yearly after that.
Okay. And Robbie asked, now we've kind of already answered this, but we'll ask it anyway here. Robbie says, my question is, since you can play all these leagues in an exhibition game, if they might make the most of the current top known national teams available for play in exhibition games, and if exhibition tournaments and or best of series might become a thing. And I think you kind of addressed that already.
Yeah, if we do get it into the custom mode, that'll be something that's happened. National teams in custom and exhibition are a little more complicated just because we don't have really a roster of the national teams. We've got, the historical data that says, this player played a game in the World Championships for this team in this year. We might be able to pull something out of that. It would be complicated. That may be a tough one to do. Go ahead, Ron.
What about World Juniors? You must have a pretty good database for that.
Yeah, same thing. Literally the same thing. I mean, if we did the if we did the national teams, or at least the real national teams in the last few years, we could probably do the World Juniors at the same time. That's also something that's also on my list for stuff to get into historical mode eventually, so we can start going back and see those great tournaments.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much. Now, you guys do a stream mostly every Wednesday night, right?
Yep, Wednesday nights, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. Eastern. No, I got to think.
Yeah, 10 p.m. Boston time. Yep, and that's on Twitch, right?
Yeah, we alternate back and forth. Adam, our community manager, does a modern game right now. He's doing the San Jose Sharks, and right now, and I usually do a historical game or something other than the standard modern game. And at the moment, we're doing the 1940s Rangers.
Ooh.
Not sure how long I'm going to stay with that. That's because we had 1940s and 50s were great years for New York sports, except for the Rangers.
Oh.
So I'm trying to see if I can get them up to that standard and to show off a few of the things. And I'm playing it a little differently than the way we do in the standard game. Adam goes game by game and slowly and methodically, and said that's if you want to see how the game is played, that's the one to really watch. I'm doing it in historical mode where you can rip through seasons very quickly, and I'm trying to sort of highlight how you build a team over time. And I can compress that relatively quickly, particularly playing in the original six, where there's you can get through a season in a minute or two.
Now that's is it OOTP or OOTP Developments on Twitch?
OOTP Developments
on Twitch. Okay, and you guys also have the YouTube channel. I saw some of the videos go over there to OOTP Developments, I believe, on YouTube. Correct?
Yep, I think everything is set. Yeah.
Yep. And now we can get the game on Steam, obviously, right?
Yep, Steam, and you can buy it through our website, otpdevelopments.com. There's options to buy a standalone version there, and don't think I'm allowed to talk about this yet, but we're working on something else right now, another place where we'll be able to sell it.
Okay, good. All righty. Any final words, Jeff? You want to add anything here before you go? Talk about anything before we go about the game, or?
No, just that we've got, just to let everybody know where we are right now. The new update was out yesterday, and pretty good feedback so far. I haven't checked our tech support forum, so there may be a disaster waiting for me in there that I don't know about yet. But that looks like it's going well, and the next update, probably we're just kind of deciding on this now. It'll be focused on the chalkboard, the 2D engine stuff, which is probably going to be another month or so out, and then probably another big one after that at the trading deadline, so you can get the final, which is April this year, so you can get the final NHL rosters in. And there'll probably be smaller. They may be smaller updates if we've got to fix stuff between the big ones, but there's still at least 2 big ones with new content coming out this year.
Has all the COVID stuff and the crazy schedules, has that made it more difficult?
Oh God, yeah.
Oh, it has.
Huge pain. Yeah, that's particularly trying to make sense out of the rosters. Like you've got a lot. The Ontario Hockey League, for one, their season is still up in the air. They haven't said anything officially yet. And they're probably, even if they do play, they're probably only going to play a couple of dozen games like the Western Hockey League is doing this year. So you've got a lot of their kids have headed over to play in Europe this year. So the question is, do I put those guys on the European team roster at the start of the season? Because still, ostensibly, there's an OHL season to play in the game. Or do I move them back to their OHL team to start with, so the team isn't missing all of its key players? So right now, for the most part, they're mainly back in the OHL. I may have to change that depending on what happens, and then just find stuff like finding schedules. There's a couple of leagues where I just had to throw up my hands and say, no, I can't. There's been so many cancellations, I can't put a coherent schedule here. So I'll just give you a schedule of the appropriate length, and we'll let a game generate one. And then stuff like the NHL, the crazy format this year, the German league changed its format quite a bit too, and then other leagues have shortened schedules, changed their divisions around. It's been, I
know the East Coast League, the whole East Coast North Division canceled, I think, except for one game maybe.
And the Southern Professional League, they're only playing with half of their teams this year, and then 3 of the AHL teams aren't playing this year. It's just a big old mess.
Yeah, it is. So anyway, Jeff, I want to thank you for coming on to the Digital Today show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
And talking some hockey here that I like to talk about here. So Franchise Hockey Manager 7, people go check it out on Steam and on otdevelopments.com as well. And again, thanks for joining us here, Jeff. And by the numbers, this was episode 73 of the Digital Dice podcast. Thanks to Jeff Riddolls for coming on and for talking some hockey. You can never talk enough hockey, Ron. That was a fun time talking to Jeff about Franchise Hockey Manager, and more specifically Franchise Hockey Manager 7, which I've had a lot of fun playing, and I've been doing some streaming of that this week myself. Let's see ways to get a hold of us. digitaltodice.com is our website. digitaltodice@yahoo.com if you want to send us an email. The text line, send us a text, 978-751-DICE, 978-751-3423. And over on Facebook, facebook.com/groups/digitaltodice. Ron, thanks for joining me again.
As always.
You're still the co-host of the show. 73 episodes in, and you're still the co-host.
Look, I just say goodnight, David.
Good night, David.
Bye-bye.